I hear a lot about creepy men. What's your creepy woman story? Working in retail, you can get customers with creepy attachment issues. My assistant manager was a man, and this slightly older woman would come in all the time when he was working. Then she started bringing him coffee. Then it was full meals that he didn't want. I had to step in and tell her that she couldn't come in on his shifts anymore because it was a distraction, and work is, well, work. So she started leaving him notes on his car with her number, poetry, etc. When he didn't call her, she just straight up waited for him at night. We finally had to get mall security involved because she just didn't understand that he didn't want to date her. A general rule of thumb, and exceptions certainly may exist, but don't try to get with people at their place of work, especially if it involves customer service. That is a bad position to put a worker in. I was a regular at a restaurant, and I asked a waitress that I liked out, and she said yes. I took her to a play, and she got up and started to shout at the actors as if she was part of the play. We got kicked out. We went to a friend's bar and hung out with a few friends of mine. She went up to one of the girls and said, "I love your hair." She said thanks, but then my date grabbed her arm and stared at her. "No, I really love your hair." A few minutes passed. I was talking to my really nice hair friend, and I saw my date behind her analyzing her hair, studying it. On the ride home, I was silent and hoped I could just get her home without her saying a thing. Out of the blue, she told me a story about when she was a little girl and she wanted a handbag at a store, and how the store owner would let her have it if she would let him touch her. I got to her place before she could finish her story. A girl transferred to my high school during my freshman year. She was a sophomore. We met once at a football game and shared a couple laughs over stupid jokes. Then she decided I needed her to take me under her wing and would follow me around between classes, giving me pointers on my looks, clothes, etc. It was annoying but not creepy at all for several weeks. Until she showed up at my house, I never told her where I lived, with a bag from Kohl's full of skimpy clothes she'd bought for me to wear. She thought she needed to fix my looks to improve my life or something. I refused to let her in my house after she showed me some of the clothes, and my dad got her to leave by threatening to call the police. She literally stood at my door ringing the doorbell and knocking on it for 30+ minutes until Dad threatened her. After that, she started a rumor at school that I was stalking her and that I was a lesbian and infatuated with her. She treated me like a walking virus for the rest of the school year. She didn't come back for her junior year, so I hope she moved and didn't die or something. That is weirdly intense. Was she in some kind of 90s movie bet to make you over because some jocks were like, no one would date her or something? Once had a girl send me a note in class asking me to be her stallion. I answered with another note politely saying I wasn't looking for a mare. Well, next day I get a very long letter telling me I'm one of Satan's disciples and would burn in hell. Basically saying I'm an evil person with lots of religious references and formulas. Her sweet love transformed into intense hatred when I said no, and it lasted for years. What are religious formulas? 1 + 1 = 0 unless you leave room for the Lord in that equation. Does a much older coworker popping her dentures out at lunch, making a BJ motion at me from across the cafeteria count as creepy? Ex-girlfriend 10 years ago still tries to initiate intercourse with me despite being married and having 2 kids with 2 different guys. Date me or I'll kill myself. Fun times. Got nice guyed by a girl in college. We worked together on a group project. I'd always be really nice because why not? I was never flirty though, or like, oh, you look good today, because I wasn't interested in lying. I guess she figured I was into her. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. I like you as a classmate, but I'm not interested in anything else. She ended up figuring out who I was adding on Facebook, and if they were a girl, she would send them messages about the kind of guy I was. Basically saying I led her on to get what I wanted from her before ditching her. I'm a woman, but I am an acquaintance who is hardly even that to me anymore. She's obsessive over men and women, desperate. If an attractive person, but particularly men, so much as says hello to her, she goes full online stalker mode. She'll find out the name of your third cousin's wife's brother and bring it up in conversation unprompted, that level of creepy. Have intercourse with her and suddenly you're her boyfriend and she wants to meet your mom. She's unhinged and has a lot of abandonment issues. She refuses to seek professional help. She's exhausting to associate with, so I stopped doing that. I was at a play with my significant other, and the woman sitting to my left kept gradually leaning away from her man on the left. It was odd. She was probably about 15 years older than I. I never acknowledged her, but by the end of the first act, she, roughly speaking, had her head resting on my shoulder. I changed seats at intermission. We still have a good laugh about it every so often. It took me a minute to realize you meant you and your significant other still have a laugh about it. At first I thought you meant the other woman, and I was like, damn, guess her shoulder gambit worked. I had a girl in high school write me a song the day after I had moved there and started school. She would peek over lockers when I would come down the hall and show up at my bedroom window at night multiple times asking me to come outside and kiss her. I met this girl on Tinder a few years back, but never bothered meeting with her. I guess I must have mentioned where I stayed at school because she randomly showed up at my apartment unannounced. This happens more than people think. When I was in my early 20s, a local radio DJ who must have been mid-30s arranged with my boss for me to leave work for a couple of hours to go to her house, obviously wanting intercourse. She was hot and super friendly, but it was weird. She kept on telling me how beautiful I was and wanting to dance, etc. We didn't do it. It didn't strike me at the time how very bizarre it was to do that, but I'm in my 40s now and this is really predatory behavior. I have also had an ex lock me in her bedroom against my will. The same woman also threatened to kill herself if I broke up with her. She snuck into my house one morning and woke up to her giving me a blowjob after I had broken up with her. Eventually I told her that if she was going to kill herself after I break up with her, then she should go ahead and do it. She didn't. A lot of mid-30s to mid-40s women are super predatory and wildly inappropriate to younger men, but it gets written off because dudes should enjoy it, right? More like weirded out a bit. One woman in public transport was looking at me without even moving her head elsewhere, literally staring at me until she got off. Oh, until she got off the transport! I took that in a very different way. Super fast girlfriend. The day we officially got together, I was walking her home when she stopped by a storefront and started looking at baby stuff. When I asked her if someone she knew had one recently, she just said it was for the baby we would be having in a couple months after our wedding. That was the shortest relationship of my life. I was showering at the gym in a stall with no curtain, and this fully dressed woman came along, leaned on the opposite wall about 3 meters away, and just stared at my body for the duration. The creepy thing is, she didn't make eye contact or anything. She was literally looking me up and down with dead eyes and an expressionless face like I was a piece of meat or something she had no interest in interacting with on an interpersonal level. It made me feel kind of invisible despite the scrutiny. Hands down the creepiest woman I've ever seen. Oh, fricking, where do I start? I drove a yellow cab during the Great Recession. 35-plus-year-old wasted woman gets handsy. I keep getting this one chick would spend the whole ride trying to convince me to date her and dump my girlfriend. I had 40s-something blonde grab my crotch hard enough, I yelped. Another was trying to get me to have a three-way with her and her boyfriend. Fricking no thank you. I was working third shift at a gas station a few years ago, and this lady used to come in at least twice a week to buy a chocolate milk. I got a weird vibe from her and everyone told me to stay away, but I'm a nice person and thought maybe she just needs a friend. Well, she'd come in, and because I was so friendly, maybe 2 months after I started showing friendliness to her, she started asking me really random questions. Like, are you here alone? When was the last time you ate? How old is your boss? Are you into pony play? Do you like white fudge? One night she got angry with me. She asked if I was there alone, and I told her no, I'm always there alone. She asked where my coworker was, and I said in the cooler. The girl literally walked over and searched the cooler and said, I didn't see anyone. You lied to me. She ran outside, grabbed a brick out of her purse, threw it in my car window, and gave me the finger. She came in twice after that, but I quit shortly after. I'll never know what happened to her. Holy crap, I mean, I'm not a big fan of lying, but I would classify that reaction as a bit over the top. Now, about that question on pony play. When I was around 15, I was in a very crowded subway wagon, and this MILF-looking lady in front of me started rubbing her butt on me, and I got a boner. She was also talking to a friend of hers while doing this. It was so packed I couldn't move or go anywhere. This lasted for 1 or 2 stops until she reached her destination and left. Actually, besides feeling it was inappropriate, I didn't mind and I enjoyed it. I can't help but think how wrong it would be if the genders were reversed, though. This was in my freshman year of high school a couple years ago. I was in a boarding school, so we all lived in co-ed dorms. I was getting in the elevator alone and the doors were about to close when suddenly a girl sprints toward the door and makes it just in time. Now, I've heard rumors that this girl is kinda creepy, but I try not to think about it. She leans over, quickly puts a hand up my shirt and says, "Nice abs." I push her away and I'm like, "Ew, the F? Don't do that." She asks me if I know what yaoi is. I'm Japanese. I say yeah, and then she responds with, "I like it a lot." Okay. The doors open and I speed walk out of there ASAP. Never met a creepier girl yet. Went to a memorial recently at a swanky rooftop bar of a hotel. This woman with a shaved head was literally going from group to group around the roof. Note, not every group was there for the memorial. She was sitting very, very close to people, touching them, trying to almost be the center of attention everywhere she went. At one point, she asked one of the guys who was there with me for this memorial to kiss her on the cheek. Clearly wasted. Someone called security on her and her escorted from the property. Honestly, pretty tame on the old creepiness scale. Unless that woman was talking about yaoi or pony play to people, then I would bump it up a few notches. I'm not a man that had to deal with her, but she was a friend of mine. I had a really, really crappy breakup, and she became a sort of a confidant because apparently she was going through the same thing. My relationship lasted a year, and it was really intense and ended very suddenly, unexpectedly over a phone call. I was deeply depressed. We talked a lot about how much we loved our partners and how we missed them and how much it sucks. A few weeks into talking about this crap and just hanging out in general, I found out her relationship with this person only lasted 4 months, during which they had never exchanged I love yous. And there was very little communication from the guy that he wanted it to continue. But she was obsessed. They worked together and she confided in me that when he would get up from his computer at work, she would jump on his computer and see if he was messaging any girls on Facebook. This is already a few months after they had broken up. She would keep trying to get him to come over to her house under the guise that she wanted to make up and be friends because they worked together, and then she'd get him too wasted to be able to drive home and he'd have to stay. He did this once, and she coerced him to get into bed with her. The next morning, he told her this was a mistake, and she started messaging me about how he used her and why would he sleep with her if he didn't mean it. I had to remind her that she was in the wrong for manipulating him into getting too wasted to drive home. She got mad that I said that. After that, she tried to get with one of my friends. I found out later just to make the other guy jealous, and he complained to me that he liked her, but every time they hung out, she came over completely wasted and he had to take care of her. She really liked getting so wasted that men had to take care of her. One time she was so wasted that she vomited on herself and I was trying to help her get into the shower, but she kept acting like she was passing out and was non-responsive because she wanted a male to take care of her and help her shower. All of my guy friends at the party were really uncomfortable with that. My friend ended up dumping her because they hadn't hung out a single time where she hadn't been wasted off her butt, and then she starts texting me about how he's abusive and a butthole. I stopped being friends with her after that, and after she tried to frame my ex-boyfriend for dumping her on the street, where she got arrested for public intoxication and underage drinking. My ex doesn't have a car. She makes women like me who actually have been in abusive relationships and actually have been assaulted look bad. It makes me angry. Good lord, this sounds like one heck of a manipulative person. I was ready to write you off, OP, when you were judging her for her relationship for only being 4 months when yours was 1 year, which, come on. But the rest of her actions quickly got me on your side. Yikes. I was 21 in a bar. Told this older lady, maybe 35, that I was a Republican. I didn't see her again. Like 4 hours later, she comes up behind me and presses me up against the bar and starts aggressively rubbing my junk over my pants. Literally pinning me against the bar and trying to be naughty, she starts asking me, "Is that Republican enough for you?" I escaped. I literally ran away and hid in my car for my friends like a beaten dog. Frick, Rhode Island. Acquaintance that worked at my son's after-school care. Talked to her a handful of times max. She learns I do IT work for a living, asks me if I can fix a malware issue with her laptop. She brings it to me, and while I'm clearing it up, I open the downloads folder to run some tools I downloaded, and there are about 15 photos of me. Some from my LinkedIn, a couple from my employer's About Us page, and some she took of me from her phone, stalker style. It was awkward to say the least. She turned about 10 shades of red and nervously laughed it off. I tried to pretend like I just didn't see the weirdest thing in my life. Thank God my son was going to middle school the following year. I tried to avoid her at all costs after that. I knew this couple in high school, and the girl was fricked up. They're either always together and sharing jokes, or the girl is quickly walking away with tears streaming down her face. He dumped her numerous times, but they always get back together because she threatened to kill herself. I don't know if they're together now, but I'm hoping for the best for both. Dated a girl many moons ago. At first it was great, but it spiraled out of control. She had some mental health issues and self-harmed, but together we worked through it. One time I didn't answer her call as I was in a cinema watching a movie with my uncle, and she thought I was cheating on her or something, and very badly self-harmed, ended up in hospital. While that's not exclusively creepy, she went on to tell me she was on the pill when she wasn't. And I, being a naive teenager at the time, believed her. She then told me she was pregnant and would talk in her sleep about how much of a good father I was going to be. Later, and luckily for me, turned out she wasn't pregnant. She fell out with some girl and told me she was going to beat the crap out of her in broad daylight in the middle of the town, which was also about 30 yards from a police station. When I pointed out how stupid that was, I got yelled at saying I wasn't supporting her. She then fell out with her mom and asked to move in with me. I was a teenager at the time looking for my own place to live, and I worked full-time. She wanted to live there for free. Again, I pointed out that wasn't going to work and she needed to pay for like half of everything as well to contribute to the home. She didn't like that. Eventually, we broke up, my choice, and I tried to stay friendly with her so she didn't kill herself or something else bad. She would regularly text me about all the guys she'd been seeing and all the intercourse she'd had, I presume in an attempt to make me jealous, although I was genuinely happy she'd moved on. A few months down the line, and I found somebody new. She instantly got onto the whole, who is it? What does she look like? And, not being from the same town, I mentioned she wouldn't know her, etc. Turned out she had a friend who did know her and proceeded to tell me what a total B she was, and all this strange crap about her and how I shouldn't date her. I then blocked her, the ex, and haven't spoken to her since then. It's really tough being with someone who is dealing with depression and other mental issues because you really care about them and want to help them, but there comes a point when you start to wonder if you're staying with them because you would feel guilty for leaving. I'm just bringing my own crap into this, and honestly, I would edit this out, but hey, if hearing it helps any of you out, I'll just leave it. I was still in high school, probably grade 11 or 12, standing at a bus stop with some friends. This middle-aged lady comes up to me and tells me how pretty I am. I didn't find myself pretty at all, and I was surrounded by my friends who were much more beautiful. I'm flattered that a stranger would think that, so I'm blushing and thank her for being so nice. Then she proceeds in broken English to gesture back and forth from her boobs to mine and ask if they're real. I hesitantly say yes. She keeps going on, asking me how big they are and asking about my bras. I'm feeling really uncomfortable by then, but I can't really walk away as we're waiting for a bus, and my friends just think it's funny. I try to ignore, but she starts trying to pull me away from my friends and telling me how much money I could make if I came and worked for her. Finally, an adult standing at the bus stop stepped in and told her to frick off, and she walked away. Showed up to a social function of mine just for me giving her the day of the week. Worked for me because I was a total incel at the time. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. So, I'm a local TV reporter and I'm on Tinder. This one time I matched with an apparent superfan from my station. Now, it's not unusual for me to be recognized. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough where it's not a big deal. So about 2 months ago, I matched with a girl who instantly said, "I know you, you're the border issues reporter from the news." I told her I was, and we kept talking about normal stuff. Except she kept changing the subject. "Do you know traffic reporter? How is main anchor doing with their cancer? What do they look like without a wig? What happened to old anchor? What is random reporter like? Is New Mexico reporter really as nice as she seems?" And much more. It ended up being all she asked me about and made me very uncomfortable, so I just blocked her on Tinder. Not me, but a mate. He had a serious girlfriend who he knew, probably didn't admit at the time, was a little unstable. He bought a cheap boat and sailed with her down from the UK, stopping along the way in France, Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. Plan was to head into the Mediterranean and then follow the canals up through France and home. All was going well until they were going through the canals and were tied up alongside each night. She started drinking pretty heavily, and this escalated to her disappearing off for nights. He spoke to her about it, she apologized and promised to stop. Got better for a while, but surprise, surprise, it started again. He spoke to her about it again and discussed her flying home. After that, she stopped again until one night he woke up to discover himself doused in petrol and her standing over him with a Zippo. Rather swiftly, he jumped out of his bunk, disarmed her out cold, and called her dad to come pick her up. Sailed the boat back himself and still carries the Zippo with him everywhere. Too long didn't read, mate's girlfriend goes a bit wibble and tried to set him on fire. This sounds so unreal. I want to say it is fake or from a movie, but what movie? This escalated so suddenly and wow. I don't have good taste in women, and they start off sane, but either I trigger emotional collapse if they were only sort of there in the first place. I had a crazy girlfriend by the name of Laura. Laura was an 8. She's actually done modeling, which is an impressive catch for me. Anyway, she started to take pictures of me sleeping. Fine, but then she'd send them to people. Sometimes if I had a nap in the day, she would bring people in to show them how cute I was. Things went downhill when I refused to cover a lasagna dish in the fridge, and she was convinced I was trying to poison her. Then we broke up. Unrelated reasons that were my fault. Lots of phone stalking, silent messages, crying messages, text messages with just a period, full stop. Offensive, racial, and homophobic slurs, really nasty stuff. She left dead flowers on my doorstep. She kept appearing where I hung out with friends. One time she came into a newsagent I was working with and slit her wrist. I had to clean it up and wipe it off the crunchy bars, which we still sold. The worst part of it is everyone just laughed at me. I want to apologize to the last story I said sounded fake. If we're grading on a curve, that whole sailboat Zippo lady suddenly sounds perfectly believable after whatever this was. If this story was real, I would like to apologize to the OP in the form of offering a few writing lessons. Went on a Tinder date and noped out in a kind way after some drinks, saying we were too different and thanked her for the company. Next day I get a phone call from my mother saying that my girlfriend was worried about me hurting myself and being depressed. My mom was obviously freaked out by this and wondering why I never introduced them to my girlfriend. After explaining them what happened, I still had the feeling my mother didn't believe me, which hurt. The psycho girl sent me multiple love letters and called my parents a few more times. My mother eventually met her in person to tell her to get help and gave her some contacts, which was sweet of her to do, but really awkward as well. I'm not on Tinder anymore. Met this chick through a friend. We did it once, and I didn't feel crap like no connection, so I told her. Of course, she goes crazy and says I only used her for pee. She ends up getting gangbanged to make me jealous, and from time to time she goes to my job to tell me that my intercourse was whack and crap like that. Funny thing is, I never told her where I work or what days. A girl parked her car next to mine no matter where I parked mine in high school. Honestly, maybe she just liked your car or knew you left it unlocked, so if people were going to steal, they would go for yours over hers. I helped run a technology conference a few years back. The keynote speaker was an entrepreneur who made millions developing a highly successful website. Any more information, and it would be compromising. On the day of the conference, he shows up and this strange lady approaches him, gets on her knee, and proposes. She was promptly tackled and taken away by security. We later found her blog, and it was nothing but grainy pictures of her kissing a cutout print of the entrepreneur taped to a bag of rice. She's a keeper. Girl in my class fell in love with me. I didn't fell for her. On one music class, she sang a song about me, and whole class had to listen it. After the song, she started to cry, and our teacher told me to stay after the class, and I got detention because I had hurt my crazy classmates' feelings so bad. This is my time to shine. I got a good one that happened to me. I once got a message from a girl while using a dating app in Brazil. She seemed normal for about 4 days, then got extremely clingy, jealous, controlling, and borderline psychotic/bipolar. She refuses to seek help and told me that her father prefers to pay for her living in a house far from him than living with her. I blocked her about 15 times on WhatsApp and 6 times on different fake profiles that she made on Facebook. Somehow she found my work's number, floor, room, and called me from time to time. I was a receptionist. I had to answer the phone. In our last conversation, she told me that she became a prostitute. That's really sad. All this was about 1.5 years ago. Last week, she stalked me again and tried to follow me on Instagram. I deleted it. She just won't quit even if I move to another country. A lot of these stories are filled more with crazy/psychotic women rather than creepy women. The one who talked to her reflection in the bus window. A lot. Posted this before, but it was definitely one of the creepiest experiences I had. So about 5 years ago, I was working at Starbucks. That day, I volunteered to take the closing shift of another store in the same city, but more central. About 4 hours before closing, this girl comes in I knew from school. She always had a creepy vibe to her. Was super pale, slightly overweight, and had messy hair that looked like she didn't wash them for quite a while. Well, she comes up to the counter where I was prepping drinks and started talking about whatever, didn't really listen. Suddenly, she asked if I want to hang out with her after work. I tell her just no, I can't at first, but she wouldn't accept that. So I told her I'd be working too long and I'd be too tired after anyway. She didn't hang around much longer and left the store. I kept doing my stuff in the store and it gets later. Around 11 p.m. the store closed and the streets outside emptied. Then it hit me like a brick wall. On the other side of the street, between two stores, that crazy bee was waiting and just standing there watching the store. I kinda ignored her, but was still kinda concerned as this was not normal behavior. I tell my barista about it and tell her she should keep an eye on the crazy chick while I do the tills for the day. Store was closed down at that point anyway and she couldn't get in. As I came back from the office, my barista told me that Ms. Crazy didn't move once the whole time and just watched. By now, I got really nervous as we were pretty much finished with everything and it was time to leave the store. So we leave and I make sure everything's closed while ignoring the crazy girl the best I can. I walk with my coworker towards the train station in a fast pace and she just follows us. Didn't say a word to us or anything, just followed us. I lost eyesight when we entered the station as it was still pretty crowded. Went into my train and came home, relieved she never actually approached me, but still to this day I have never been as creeped out by another person. It isn't too often that you'll hear me say something like this, but call the police if that happens. If she was standing there watching the store for 4 hours, then following you, you have no idea what she might do. I've been waiting to tell this story for a long time. One night I went to a bar that runs these kink-friendly events. During my visit, there was a woman who called herself Lasagna in the back where the St. Andrew's cross was, and she was straddling it and asked me to spank her. Given that she appeared to be wasted and I did not know her, as well as the fact that she wore a leg crutch, I declined and said, "Let's chat first." Things go okay given the odd circumstances. Had her on my lap for a bit and just chatting. I think I should have just left at that point when she confessed to being a communist single mother with polio. Later on, she gets off of me to meet with her friend and for whatever reason she pulled out a stun gun and activated it. Needless to say, the owner ran over to ask who had it and to put it away. I'm thinking nothing could get weirder about this until I made a joking remark about me being punched in the face or something like that in response to something else. She thought that gave her permission to strike me in the jaw with a pretty weak hit. After being taken aback, I told her to leave and that the hugs she tried to solicit from me upon heading out would not be given. Haven't seen her since. You ever read a story so wild that you just kind of know it has to be true? I certainly have. Dated a girl a couple months ago that after 2 dates decided to show up at my work. 2 dates! Was sitting there in the parking lot when I got to work. I was like, what the F? Ended it pretty much later that week. There was other warning signs too, but that kind of creeped me out the most. When I tried to break up with my first girlfriend ever, I was 15, she told me she would kill herself if I broke up with her. Good times. I have a few. One, I was about 250 pounds at this time. About 200 pounds of muscle, the rest of fat, so not a small dude. Girlfriend was 105 pounds. We broke up, she didn't take it well. She broke up with me and then a week later wanted to get back together, but I wasn't having it. This tiny woman would come over at midnight, 6 a.m., whatever time she wanted to talk because she wanted to give it another try even after I told her I was done and we were over. She would bang on the door, the backyard, sliding glass door, leave a cryptic notes on my car. I was terrified. I never made a big deal about it as the few friends that did know made fun of me being afraid of a tiny woman. But for a good 9 months, I was constantly looking over my shoulder. 2, woman I barely met and did it with. The first and only night, I woke up to her sitting cross-legged in a dark room on the edge of the bed with her back on the wall just looking at me. I woke up and asked what was going on. She said she just liked watching me sleep, and I got the F out of there. 3. Not to shame anyone's intimate needs, but I started dating a submissive woman who wanted me to break her and turn her out. I asked what she meant, and she wanted me to force her into submission intimately. I said, okay, let's do this. After doing it, she said she was hoping for more. I asked for more details. So it seems my intimate play of spanking her, restraining her arms, calling dirty names was a good start, but she needed to know that my animalistic side was enough to tame her, and she wanted me to beat her, leave bruises, choke her, and hit her face. If I broke a bone, that would be okay, but she needed to know I was man enough to tame her. No safe words. She wanted to be beaten like a pimp would a new trick. I thought about it and just couldn't do it. I don't mind a little BDSM, I don't mind role play, but I couldn't full force hit and really hurt a woman no matter if it turned her on for me to do so. She broke up with me shortly thereafter. I honestly hope she either finds someone more compatible or she no longer has those desires, as they seemed self-destructive to say the least. 4. Daughter's friend's mother, married. Constantly says really inappropriate crap, even in front of my wife. I bet you have a large peen. If you need help putting him to bed, just call me, etc., etc. I have never flirted back, ever, and she keeps saying stuff I just flat out ignore now as I don't want to cause drama. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.